The ache had a specific address. It lived in the hollow space just beneath Alara's ribs, a tenant that had moved in 2 years, 4 months, and 16 days ago, and had never once considered paying rent. It was a quiet, insistent thing, a dull throb that sharpened into a blade whenever Chloe laughed, a specific, unrestrained peal of sound that Alara felt more than heard. It was the sound of sunlight, if sunlight could be captured in a jar and released in shimmering waves. For Alara, it was also the sound of a beautifully locked door, with the key resting just out of reach on the other side. Tonight, the ache was particularly vocal. It hummed along to the rhythm of the rain lashing against the window panes of Alara's small apartment, a percussive counterpoint to the soft drama unfolding on the television screen. Chloe was curled into the opposite end of the sofa, a plush chenille blanket pulled up to her chin, her socked feet tucked beneath a cushion. The golden light from the floor lamp caught the reddish highlights in her brown hair, turning the strands into threads of spun copper. She was complaining about Mark again, and Alara was performing her sacred, agonizing duty as the supportive best friend. He just doesn't get it, you know? Chloe's voice was a frustrated sigh, muffled by the blanket. I try to explain that I need more than just presence. I need engagement. I need someone to see me, not just look at me. Alara nodded, her gaze fixed on the muted movie. It was some romantic comedy they had both seen a dozen times, the dialogue a familiar hum beneath Chloe's monologue. I know, she said, her own voice carefully neutral, a practiced calm that cost her more than Chloe would ever know. Each word of support was a small betrayal of her own heart. It's like I'm speaking a different language, Chloe continued, shifting on the couch, the movement sending a subtle waft of her shampoo, vanilla and sandalwood, across the space between them. Alara's lungs tightened. The scent was so intrinsically Chloe that it felt like an invasion, a sweet, suffocating cloud of everything she couldn't have. I'll be telling him about my day, about the stupid presentation and how nervous I was, and he'll just be scrolling through his phone, nodding and saying uh-huh in all the wrong places. And then he'll look up and say, "That's nice, babe," and I just want to scream. Alara risked a glance. Chloe's brow was furrowed, her lovely face a mask of genuine unhappiness. A vicious, ugly part of Alara rejoiced in that unhappiness, a tiny, dark creature in her soul that whispered, "He doesn't deserve you." She crushed it immediately, smothering it with the practiced loyalty of her friendship. "Have you told him that?" "Exactly like that." 100 times, Chloe scoffed, her eyes rolling. "It's like pouring water into a sieve. It goes in one ear and out the other. He thinks as long as he takes me out to dinner once a week and remembers my birthday, he's fulfilled his boyfriend duties. There's no depth, no connection. It feels like I'm playing a part, the girlfriend in the sitcom of his life." The words hung in the air, heavy and true. Connection. The word was a knife, turning slowly in that hollow space under Alara's ribs. Connection was what they had. It was the foundation of their friendship, this effortless understanding that flowed between them. They could sit in comfortable silence for hours, or talk until the sun came up, finishing each other's sentences, knowing what the other needed before it was even articulated. It was the purest, most profound connection Alara had ever known. And for her, somewhere along the line, it had curdled into love. A desperate, hopeless, all-consuming love. She had to say something. She had to offer the sage, impartial advice of a best friend. Maybe you just need to have a serious talk. Set some non-negotiables. Tell him what you need, clearly, and if he can't give it to you, she let the sentence trail off, the implication clear. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. She was coaching Chloe on how to fix a relationship that Alara prayed every night would simply dissolve. It made her feel like a fraud. Chloe sighed again, a deeper, more resigned sound this time. She uncurled herself slightly and her foot, no longer tucked away, brushed against Alara's thigh. The contact was fleeting, barely a whisper of wool sock against denim, but electricity, white-hot and immediate, shot up Alara's spine. She flinched, a tiny, imperceptible movement, praying Chloe hadn't noticed. The ache in her chest flared, sharp and demanding. It was always like this. The smallest, most incidental touch from Chloe felt like a brand, searing her skin, reminding her of the chasm between what was and what she desperately wanted. "You're probably right," Chloe murmured, her attention finally drifting to the movie. The main characters were having their big, climactic kiss in the rain. It was cheesy and predictable, but a fresh wave of longing washed over Alara, so potent it made her dizzy. She imagined what it would be like to kiss Chloe, to feel those soft lips against hers, to finally close the torturous distance between them. The thought was so vivid, so tangible, that she felt a phantom warmth on her own mouth. "They make it look so easy," Chloe said, her voice soft and wistful. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, a strange, faraway look in them. Alara wondered if she was thinking of Mark, if she was wishing for a love like the one on the screen. The thought was another twist of the knife. "It's a movie, Chloe," Alara managed, her voice a little too rough. She cleared her throat. "It's not supposed to be realistic." "I know." But still, Chloe turned her head, her gaze finally meeting Alara's across the shadowed space of the couch. Her eyes, a warm, liquid brown with flecks of gold, were serious. "Don't you ever wish it could be that easy? To just find the person who fits perfectly, and have it all just click?" The question was a direct hit. Alara's carefully constructed walls trembled. "I have," she wanted to scream. "She's sitting 3 feet away from me, complaining about a man who doesn't see the universe in her eyes, and she has no idea." Instead, she offered a weak, non-committal shrug. "I guess. I don't really think about it." It was the biggest lie she had ever told. She thought about it constantly. She thought about it every time Chloe's hand brushed hers, every time they shared a pizza and their knees touched under the table, every time Chloe fell asleep on her shoulder during a movie marathon. She thought about it so much that the thoughts had become a part of her, woven into the very fabric of her being. Chloe held her gaze for a moment longer, a flicker of something unreadable in her expression, before she turned back to the screen. The credits were rolling. The rain continued its relentless assault on the glass. The space between them felt charged, filled with all the things Alara couldn't say. She felt like a ghost in her own life, haunting the edges of the story she desperately wanted to be the center of. The ache was there, a faithful companion. It pulsed with the steady, quiet rhythm of her own impossible heart. 2 years, 4 months, and 16 days. And counting. The shift happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were typically unremarkable, a bland filling in the sandwich of the week, but this one tore a hole in the fabric of their carefully maintained reality. It began, as most of their pivotal moments did, with Mark. Alara was woken from a deep sleep by a frantic pounding on her apartment door. Her heart leaped into her throat, the sudden noise jarring in the pre-dawn silence. She fumbled for her phone on the nightstand. 3:17 a.m. She stumbled out of bed, pulling on a robe, her mind racing through a catalog of potential disasters. When she peered through the peephole, her heart both sank and soared in a dizzying, contradictory spiral. It was Chloe, drenched and sobbing, her face pale and streaked with mascara in the sickly yellow light of the hallway. Alara wrenched the door open. "Chloe? What happened? Are you okay?" Chloe just shook her head, a fresh wave of tears choking off any words. She practically fell into Alara's arms, burying her face in the crook of Alara's neck. Her body was racked with shudders, and she was cold, so cold, her wet clothes seeping through Alara's robe. Alara's arms came up instinctively, holding her tight, her own panic momentarily forgotten in the face of Chloe's raw distress. She kicked the door shut with her foot, half leading, half carrying Chloe toward the living room. "It's over," Chloe finally managed to gasp out, her voice ragged and broken. "Me and Mark. It's really over this time." Alara's traitorous heart gave a small, triumphant leap before being immediately drowned in a wave of guilt. She guided Chloe to the sofa, the same sofa where they had sat just last week, and gently disentangled herself. Okay, just sit here. I'm going to get you some dry clothes and a towel." She moved on autopilot, her mind a whirlwind. She grabbed her softest sweatpants and a worn university hoodie from her drawer, items that smelled of her, of laundry detergent and home. The intimacy of the gesture was not lost on her. She hesitated for a second, then grabbed the thickest towel she owned. When she returned, Chloe hadn't moved. She was just sitting there, staring into space, tears still tracking silently down her cheeks. "Here," Alara said softly, holding out the clothes. "Go change. You'll catch a cold." Chloe took the clothes with numb fingers, her eyes meeting Alara's. They were wide and lost, like a child's. He said, I expect too much. That I'm looking for a fairy tale that doesn't exist." The cruelty of it sent a fresh spike of anger through Alara. "He's an idiot, Chloe. He's an idiot who didn't know how lucky he was." A watery, broken smile touched Chloe's lips for a second. "You always know what to say." She stood up, swaying slightly, and headed toward the bathroom. While she was gone, Alara made a cup of chamomile tea, her hands moving with a purpose she didn't feel. She added 2 spoons of honey, just the way Chloe liked it. Her mind was a battlefield. One part of her, the loyal friend, was focused entirely on comforting Chloe, on easing this pain. The other, the secret, pining part, was humming with a terrifying, electric hope. "It's over. He's gone." The thought felt both like a prayer answered and a terrible curse. Chloe emerged a few minutes later, swallowed by Alara's gray hoodie, the sleeves dangling over her hands. Her wet hair was slicked back, and she'd washed the tear stains from her face, but her eyes were still red-rimmed and swollen. She looked small and vulnerable, and the sight made Alara's heart ache with a fierce, protective tenderness. She took the mug of tea Alara offered, her cold fingers wrapping around its warmth. "Thank you, Elle." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the ticking of the kitchen clock and Chloe's occasional shaky breath. Alara didn't push her to talk. She just sat beside her, a steady, quiet presence, letting her physical proximity be the comfort words couldn't offer. Finally, Chloe spoke, her voice barely a whisper. This is going to sound stupid, but can I stay here tonight? I can't go back to my place. Everything is him. And I can't be alone." "Of course," Alara said immediately, without a second of hesitation. "You can have my bed. I'll take the couch." Chloe shook her head, turning to look at Alara properly. Her gaze was intense, pleading. "No, that's not. I don't want to kick you out of your bed. Can I sleep in there with you? I know it's weird. I really, really don't want to be alone." The world tilted on its axis. The request hung in the air between them, a fragile, shimmering thing. They had had sleepovers before, of course, countless times as teenagers and even in college, sprawled out in sleeping bags or crammed into a twin bed, laughing and talking into the night. But this was different. This wasn't the giggling intimacy of youth. This was a request born from heartbreak and a need for comfort, and it carried a weight that pressed down on Alara's chest, making it hard to breathe. To lie beside Chloe all night, to feel the warmth of her body, to hear her breathing in the dark, it was both a dream come true and a form of exquisite torture. But she could not say no. She would never say no to Chloe. "It's not weird," Alara heard herself say, her voice miraculously steady. "Of course. Come on." She led the way to her bedroom, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The room was small and simple, dominated by her queen-sized bed. She pulled back the duvet, the sheets cool and crisp. The rain had softened to a gentle patter against the window. Chloe slid into the bed, curling onto her side, facing away from the center. She looked so small in the big bed. Alara walked around to the other side, her movements stiff and uncertain. She switched off the lamp, plunging the room into a soft darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of a streetlight filtering through the blinds. She got into bed, lying on her back, her body rigid, a careful foot of space between them. The silence was deafening. She could hear her own pulse thrumming in her ears. She could feel the heat radiating from Chloe's body, a magnetic pull that she had to actively resist. This was a line. They were crossing a line, and she had no idea what was on the other side. After a long, stretched-out minute, she heard a small, choked sob from the other side of the bed. Then Chloe's voice, fragile and trembling in the dark. "Elle? I'm here," Alara whispered. She felt a tentative movement, and then Chloe's hand found hers under the covers. Her fingers were still cold, and they laced with Alara's, a desperate, anchoring grip. It wasn't a casual touch. It was a lifeline. And for Alara, it was everything. A jolt of pure, unadulterated feeling, a mix of agony and ecstasy, shot through her. She squeezed Chloe's hand gently, a silent promise. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Chloe's sobs subsided into quiet, even breaths. Alara lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, Chloe's hand held firmly in hers, the warmth slowly seeping back into her fingers. The catalyst had arrived, not with a bang, but with a broken whisper in the dark and the simple, earth-shattering act of holding hands. And Alara knew, with a terrifying certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere in the apartment shifted. The air itself seemed to hum with a new, unspoken tension. Chloe didn't go back to her own place right away. She stayed, a quiet, ghost-like presence in Alara's space, sleeping on the couch most nights after that first, pivotal one in Alara's bed. The boundary had been re-established, but the memory of it lingered, a phantom warmth in the sheets. Alara found herself tiptoeing around her own home, hyper-aware of every movement, every shared glance, every accidental brush of their hands as they reached for the same coffee mug. The breakup with Mark had hollowed Chloe out, but as the raw grief subsided, it was replaced by a deep, questioning introspection. Their late-night conversations, once focused on the failings of Chloe's boyfriend, now veered into more dangerous territory. They were no longer postmortems of a dead relationship. They were explorations of the very nature of love itself. "What do you think real love is supposed to feel like?" Chloe asked one evening. They were on the floor of the living room, surrounded by takeout containers, the scent of spicy noodles filling the air. Chloe was tracing the patterns on Alara's worn Persian rug with her finger, her gaze distant. Alara's heart did a familiar, painful flip. The question was a minefield. Her honest answer was, "It feels like this. It feels like the way my breath catches when you smile. It feels like the quiet contentment of just being in the same room with you. It feels safe and terrifying all at once." But she couldn't say that. "I don't know," she said, opting for a vague, philosophical approach. "I think it's supposed to feel easy. Not the relationship itself. Relationships are work. But the being with them part. It should feel like coming home. Like you can finally take a deep breath and just be yourself, without any masks or performances." She was describing them, their friendship, and the bitter irony was not lost on her. Chloe looked up, her brown eyes searching Alara's. "I've never had that," she said, her voice quiet. "With Mark, or with anyone before him. It always felt like I was trying to be the person they wanted me to be. The cool girlfriend, the low-maintenance girlfriend, the ambitious girlfriend. It was exhausting. You shouldn't have to audition for someone's affection, Chloe." "I know," she sighed, dropping her gaze back to the rug. "It just makes me wonder if I'm broken. Maybe I don't know how to love properly. Or maybe," she hesitated, a faint blush creeping up her neck, "maybe I've been looking in all the wrong places." The words were a spark in the tinder-dry landscape of Alara's hope. She held her breath, waiting for Chloe to continue, but the moment passed. Chloe shook her head as if to clear it and started gathering the empty takeout containers, the fragile intimacy of the conversation dissolving into domestic routine. But the words remained, echoing in Alara's mind. "Maybe I've been looking in all the wrong places." The physical contact between them began to change, too. It was no longer incidental. It became more frequent, more deliberate. Chloe, who had always been tactile, became even more so, but now her touches lingered. A hand on Alara's arm to get her attention would stay there for the entire conversation. When they sat on the couch watching movies, the space between them would gradually disappear until their shoulders and thighs were pressed together, a constant, warm line of contact from shoulder to knee. Alara's entire nervous system was on high alert, cataloging every single touch, every lingering glance. One afternoon, They were working at the kitchen table, Alara on her laptop and Chloe sketching in a notepad. A strand of hair fell across Alara's face, and without looking up from her drawing, Chloe reached out and gently tucked it behind Alara's ear. Her fingers were warm, and they brushed against the shell of Alara's ear, sending a shiver down her entire body. It was an impossibly tender gesture, so casual and yet so profoundly intimate. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. She couldn't breathe. She kept her eyes glued to her screen, pretending to be engrossed in her work, but the feel of Chloe's fingers lingered on her skin like a ghost. Then came the moments that truly terrified her, the moments that fed the fragile, burgeoning hope she was trying so desperately to suppress. She started catching Chloe looking at her. Not just looking, but studying her, with an intensity that made Alara's skin prickle. She would look up from a book and find Chloe's eyes on her, a soft, curious, almost bewildered expression on her face. As soon as their eyes met, Chloe would quickly look away, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. The most significant of these moments happened during a movie night. They were watching an old black-and-white film, and Alara was explaining a plot point, her face animated as she talked. She was in the middle of a sentence when she noticed that Chloe wasn't looking at the screen, or even at her eyes. Chloe's gaze had dropped, just for a second, to her lips. It was a fleeting, almost imperceptible shift, but for Alara, it was like a lightning strike in the quiet room. The world narrowed to that single, charged look. Her words died in her throat. Her own eyes flickered down to Chloe's mouth, the soft curve of her lips illuminated by the flickering light of the television. The moment stretched, thick with unspoken possibilities. A question hung in the air, a silent, shimmering thing. What if? Chloe's eyes darted back up to meet Alara's, and the raw vulnerability in them stole Alara's breath. There was confusion there, and fear, but there was something else, too. Something soft and questioning. Something that looked terrifyingly like longing. Chloe cleared her throat and looked away abruptly, turning her attention back to the movie with a faint interest that neither of them believed. "Sorry," she mumbled. "What were you saying?" But Alara couldn't find her voice. Her mind was reeling. That look had changed the landscape. It wasn't just Alara's imagination anymore. It wasn't just her own one-sided pining. Something was happening to Chloe, too. She was standing on the edge of a cliff, and the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. The escalation was becoming unbearable, a slow, constant tightening of a string in her chest. She was caught between the terror of what this might mean and the soaring, impossible hope that it meant everything. The charged conversations, the lingering touches, the stolen glances, they were all pieces of a puzzle that was forming a picture she was too afraid to look at directly. But it was there. And she knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and petrified her, that soon, one of them was going to have to acknowledge it. The tension stretched taut over the following days, a high wire strung between their every interaction. Alara felt like she was living in a state of suspended animation, holding her breath, waiting for the wire to snap. The air in the apartment was thick with things unsaid, so dense she felt she could barely move through it. She began to pull back, a self-preservation instinct kicking in. The hope was too dangerous, too bright. It hurt to look at. She became quieter, putting a careful, physical distance between them on the couch, busying herself with chores or work whenever Chloe tried to draw her into another late-night conversation. She was terrified of that look in Chloe's eyes, the one that mirrored the desperate longing in her own heart. If she let herself believe in it, and was wrong, the fall would shatter her completely. Her withdrawal did not go unnoticed. Chloe grew quiet too, but her silence was different. It was watchful, hurt. The easy comfort that had always defined their friendship was replaced by a fragile, awkward dance of avoidance. The breaking point came on a Saturday night. Alara, in a desperate attempt to inject some normalcy back into their lives, and to create a buffer for her own spiraling emotions, had invented a crush. "Sarah from the bookstore asked me out for coffee," she said, her tone deliberately casual as she put away dishes. Her back was to Chloe, a calculated move. She couldn't have said it while looking into those searching brown eyes. The clatter of cutlery stopped. Silence. Alara's heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic, panicked rhythm. She had expected a cheerful, "Oh, that's great," or a teasing, "It's about time." She had not expected this heavy, suffocating quiet. Finally, Chloe spoke, her voice strained. "Oh, just one word, small and flat." Alara forced herself to continue, to build the fiction. "Yeah, I think I'm going to go." "She seems nice." She rinsed a plate, the sound of the running water unnaturally loud. She heard a sound behind her, a strange, choked noise. She turned, her pretense crumbling. Chloe was standing by the table, her arms wrapped around her middle as if she were cold. And she was laughing. It wasn't her usual bright, sunny laugh. It was a hollow, brittle sound, tinged with something that sounded suspiciously like disbelief. "Sarah from the bookstore?" Chloe repeated, the laugh dying in her throat. "The one with the extensive collection of cat-themed sweaters." Alara bristled, a defensive anger rising to cover her panic. "What's wrong with her sweaters?" "Nothing," Chloe said quickly, shaking her head. The strange, pained look was still on her face. "Nothing at all. It's just, you and her? I can't picture it." "Well, maybe you don't know my type as well as you think you do," Alara snapped, the words sharper than she intended. Chloe flinched, and the hurt in her eyes was so palpable that Alara immediately regretted it. The silence descended again, heavier this time. Chloe looked down at her feet, then back up at Alara, her expression a mess of confusion and something else, something Alara couldn't name. Then she said the words that shattered the world. Her voice was a whisper, so soft Alara almost didn't catch it. "But I wish it was me." Alara froze, the dishcloth slipping from her numb fingers into the soapy water. "What?" she breathed, certain she had misheard. Chloe wouldn't meet her eyes. She was staring at a spot on the floor, her cheeks flushed a deep red. "I said I wish it was me," she repeated, a little louder this time, the words trembling in the space between them. "The one asking you for coffee. The one you were excited about." Time stopped. The ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, it all faded away into a dull roar in Alara's ears. All she could hear were those 6 words, replaying themselves over and over in her mind. "I wish it was me." It was the pre-confession. The key turning in the lock of the beautiful, forbidden door. "Chloe," Alara started, her own voice a hoarse whisper. She didn't know what to say. Her mind was a blank slate, wiped clean by the shock. "I don't know what's wrong with me, Chloe rushed on, the words tumbling out in a torrent of confused emotion. She finally looked up, her eyes swimming with unshed tears. "Ever since I broke up with Mark, ever since that night, everything feels different. I've been so confused. I just know that the thought of you going out with someone else, it feels like a punch to the gut. It makes me feel sick." She took a hesitant step closer. I think I might not be as straight as I thought I was." The admission was barely audible, a fragile confession whispered into the supercharged air of the small kitchen. "And I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About love feeling like coming home." She was standing in front of Alara now, so close Alara could see the frantic pulse beating in the hollow of her throat. "When I'm with you," Chloe said, her voice dropping even lower, becoming impossibly intimate, "it's the only time I feel like I can breathe. It's the only time I feel like myself. It feels like home, El." The subtext that had governed their lives for years had just become text. The unspoken thing had been spoken. Alara felt a terrifying, exhilarating wave of emotion cresting inside her. 2 years, 4 months, and now this. All that silent pining, all that hidden ache, was staring back at her from Chloe's terrified, hopeful eyes. This was the point of no return. Sarah from the bookstore and her fictional cat sweaters had inadvertently pushed them off the cliff, and now they were in free fall together. The kitchen felt both vast and claustrophobic. Chloe's confession, raw and uncertain, hung between them, a tangible entity. Alara's mind was still catching up, processing the impossible words. "I wish it was me. It feels like home, El." It was everything she had ever dreamed of hearing, and now that it was real, she was paralyzed by the sheer, terrifying magnitude of it. "Chloe, Alara's voice failed her. What could she say? The truth was a wild, enormous beast she had kept caged in her heart for years. To unleash it now felt like an act of beautiful, terrifying destruction. Seeing Alara's hesitation, Chloe's face fell. A wave of panic washed over her features. "I'm sorry," she whispered, taking a step back, her arms wrapping around herself again. "I shouldn't have said that. It's too much. I've made everything weird. Just forget it." "Forget I said anything." The sight of Chloe retreating, of her believing for even a second that her feelings were unwanted, was what finally broke Alara's paralysis. It was a pain sharper than any she had felt during her years of silent longing. "No," Alara said, her voice clear and strong, surprising even herself. She closed the distance Chloe had created, her hand reaching out to gently grasp Chloe's arm. Chloe's skin was warm, and a jolt, that familiar, electric current, passed between them. "Don't you dare take that back." Chloe looked up, her eyes wide and glistening with tears. "But you're going out with Sarah." A humorless laugh escaped Alara's lips. "There is no Sarah," she confessed, the lie dissolving into absurdity. "There is no coffee date. There are no cat sweaters. I made her up." Chloe's brow furrowed in confusion. "What? Why would you do that?" This was it. The final wall. The moment to tear it all down. Alara took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of courage she possessed. "Because I was terrified," she said, her gaze locked with Chloe's. "Because being around you, watching you start to see me, it was too much. I thought if I created some distance, it would hurt less when you finally figured things out and went back to your life." "Figured what out?" Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "This," Alara said, her voice thick with emotion. "Us. The way my heart feels like it's going to beat out of my chest every time you walk into a room. The way I can't breathe right when you touch me." She finally let the beast out of its cage, and the truth, once spoken, was liberating. "Chloe, it has always been you. For me, it has always been you." She saw the understanding dawn on Chloe's face, followed by a wave of pure, unadulterated shock. "Always? What do you mean, always?" Alara gave a watery, trembling smile. 2 years, she said, the words a sacred, painful mantra. "For months. And about 3 weeks now." Chloe's breath hitched. Her hand came up to cover her mouth, her eyes searching Alara's, seeing the years of hidden love laid bare. "Oh, Elle," she breathed, the sound full of awe and regret. "All this time, you felt that way? And I was complaining to you about Mark? I was so blind." "You didn't know," Alara said gently. "How could you?" "But I should have," Chloe insisted, her voice fierce. I think a part of me did. I just didn't have the language for it. I didn't understand what it meant." She took another step closer, her hands finding Alara's, her fingers intertwining with them. "All those times I felt like something was missing with him, with all of them. I think it was you. I was measuring every relationship against what I had with you, and they all came up short. I just didn't realize that what I had with you wasn't friendship. Not really. Not for me." The mutual confession hung in the air, a perfect, fragile symphony. They stood there in the middle of the kitchen, hands clasped, tears streaming down both of their faces, tears of relief, of regret for lost time, of overwhelming, terrifying joy. Chloe's gaze, which had once flickered to Alara's lips in a moment of stolen curiosity, now dropped there with clear, undisguised intent. The world seemed to slow down, every detail sharpening into focus. The faint scent of vanilla and sandalwood, the warmth of Chloe's hands, the soft, trembling curve of her mouth. "Alara," Chloe whispered, her voice a fragile plea. It was the question. The one that changed everything. Can I kiss you?" Alara's response was not a word, but a choked sob that was half laugh, half yes. She gave a small, jerky nod, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. That was all the permission Chloe needed. She leaned in slowly, giving Alara every chance to pull away. But Alara didn't move. She stood her ground, meeting Chloe halfway. The first brush of their lips was impossibly soft, a tentative, questioning touch. It was hesitant and shy, a whisper of contact that sent a shockwave through Alara's entire body. It was a question and an answer all at once. Then, Chloe's hand came up to cup Alara's jaw, her thumb stroking gently against her cheek, and the kiss deepened. The initial hesitation melted away, replaced by a certainty that was breathtaking. It was a kiss of discovery, of homecoming. It was filled with all the unspoken words, all the stolen glances, all the secret, hopeless longing of the past 2 years. It was urgent and hungry, but also unbelievably tender. Alara's arms, which had been frozen at her sides, came up to wrap around Chloe's neck, pulling her closer, trying to erase the last impossible millimeter of space between them. It wasn't like the kisses in the movies, it was 1,000 times better. It was real. It was messy and salty with their tears, and it was the most perfect, right thing Alara had ever experienced. It was the feeling of a key finally sliding into a lock, of a world snapping into focus, of a soul-deep ache finally being soothed. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless, their foreheads resting against each other. They stayed like that for a long moment, their eyes closed, just breathing each other in. "Wow," Chloe breathed out, her voice full of wonder. "Oh," was all Alara could manage, the single syllable containing a universe of emotion. Chloe opened her eyes, her warm brown gaze just inches from Alara's. There were no more questions in them, no more confusion. There was only a look of such profound love and relief that it made Alara's heart ache in a new and beautiful way. That felt, Chloe started, then stopped, searching for the right word. "Right," Alara finished for her, her voice a whisper. "So right," Chloe confirmed, a real, dazzling smile finally breaking through her tears. "God, so right," and she leaned in and kissed her again, a kiss that was no longer a question, but a promise. In the immediate aftermath of the kiss, a new kind of silence descended, but this one wasn't heavy with unspoken tension. It was light, shimmering with possibility and a healthy dose of sheer, unadulterated terror. They had crossed a line, a monumental one, and now they were standing in a new, uncharted territory, holding hands and blinking in the unfamiliar light. They migrated from the kitchen to the sofa, sitting so close their knees and shoulders were pressed together, their hands still intertwined between them on the cushions. It felt both completely natural and wildly revolutionary. "I'm terrified," Chloe said into the quiet, her voice small. She was looking at their joined hands as if they were a strange and miraculous artifact. Alara felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Good," she breathed out. "Me too. I was worried I was the only 1 inch." Chloe turned to her, a small, worried frown creasing her brow. "Are you scared of this? Of me?" "No," Alara said immediately, her grip tightening on Chloe's hand. "Never of you. I'm scared of everything else. Of what this means. Of how much everything is about to change. Of messing it up," she paused, then admitted, "and I'm scared of how much I want this. It feels too good to be true. Like I'm going to wake up." A soft, genuine smile touched Chloe's lips. "You're not dreaming," she said, her thumb tracing patterns over the back of Alara's hand. The simple, repetitive motion was incredibly soothing. "And I'm scared too. I feel like my entire world just tilted on its axis. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about what I wanted, it's all different now. It's like I was living my life in black and white and you just turned the color on." The metaphor was so earnest, so perfectly Chloe, that it made Alara's heart swell. They sat with that for a moment, the weight of the changes settling around them. Then, Chloe's expression grew more serious, a shadow of the past crossing her features. "I feel so stupid," she murmured, looking away. "All that time, all those nights I sat on this very couch, crying to you about Mark, about how he didn't see me. And you were right here. Seeing me the whole time." The guilt in her voice was thick. "I made you my confidant for a relationship that was keeping me from you. That's cruel. I'm so sorry, Elle." Alara reached out with her free hand, gently touching Chloe's cheek to guide her face back. "Hey, look at me." She waited until Chloe's tear-filled eyes met hers. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You were my best friend. You were hurting, and you came to me for comfort. That's what we do. You couldn't have known, and I never would have wanted you to feel like you couldn't talk to me. Ever. But it must have been torture for you, Chloe insisted, her voice thick with regret. Sometimes, Alara admitted honestly. But I would have listened to you complain about 1,000 different marks for 1,000 years if it meant I got to keep you in my life. Being your friend was never a consolation prize, Chloe. It was the best thing in my life. This, she gestured between the two of them, this is just more. Chloe's eyes welled up again, and she leaned forward, resting her head on Alara's shoulder, a gesture they had shared countless times before. But this time was different. This time, Alara's arm came up to wrap around her, holding her close, and she pressed a soft, lingering kiss into Chloe's hair. The scent of vanilla and sandalwood filled her senses, but now, instead of an ache, it brought a profound sense of peace. It was the scent of her home. "What do we do now?" Chloe asked, her voice muffled by Alara's sweater. "About everything. About Mark. I have to go back to the apartment, get my things. I have to tell him." The mention of his name was a stark reminder of the logistical, messy reality that awaited them. "We do it together," Alara said, her voice firm with a conviction that surprised her. "We take it one day at a time. You deal with Mark and I'll be here. Waiting. Or I can come with you. Whatever you need." Chloe lifted her head, her expression full of gratitude. "Just knowing you're here is enough," she paused, a thoughtful look on her face. "It's funny. I was so afraid of being alone after the breakup. And now I realize I haven't been alone at all. I've had you." The recontextualization of their past was a continuous, startling process. They talked for hours, until the first gray light of dawn began to creep through the windows, re-examining moments from their friendship through this new, revelatory lens. The time Chloe had insisted Alara come on a weekend trip with her and Mark, claiming she'd be bored otherwise, the way Chloe's face would light up when Alara arrived at a party. All the little pieces clicked into place, forming a picture that had been there all along, just out of focus. "We have to figure this out," Chloe said, her voice laced with a new determination as the sun began to rise. "This is new, and it's scary, and we're probably going to be clumsy at it. But I don't want to be clumsy with anyone else." "Then we'll figure it out together," Alara echoed, the words feeling like a vow. The fear hadn't vanished, but it was no longer a paralyzing force. It had been joined by a hope so bright and powerful it cast the fear into shadow. They had found their way to each other through a maze of confusion and unspoken feelings, and now, standing on the precipice of a new beginning, the most important decision had already been made. They would face it, whatever it was, together. 3 months later, the world had settled into a new and beautiful rhythm. The initial terror and breathless excitement had softened, simmering down into a comfortable, easy warmth that permeated every corner of Alara's apartment, which was now unequivocally their apartment. Chloe's things had migrated over gradually, first a toothbrush, then a stack of books on the nightstand, then half the closet space, until it was impossible to tell where one of them ended and the other began. The conversation with Mark had been difficult, but clean. Chloe had handled it with a quiet grace, offering him no false hope and no unnecessary details, only the simple, unassailable truth that she hadn't been happy and that she needed to find a different path for herself. He was out of their lives, a ghost from a past that felt more distant with each passing day. This morning, Alara awoke to the smell of coffee and the soft morning light filtering through the blinds. She stretched, a contented sigh escaping her lips, her hand reaching across the bed for the warmth of another body. The space beside her was empty but still warm. She sat up, pulling the duvet around her shoulders, and just listened for a moment to the gentle sounds of Chloe moving around in the kitchen, the clink of a mug, the soft hum of a song she was humming under her breath. It was the sound of her new normal, and it was more wonderful than anything she had ever allowed herself to imagine. The constant, dull ache that had lived under her ribs for so long was gone. She would sometimes probe the space mentally, searching for it out of habit, but she would find nothing but a quiet, contented peace. It had been replaced by a feeling of wholeness, a sense that a fundamental, structural part of her that had been missing was finally in place. She padded out of the bedroom, her bare feet cool on the hardwood floor. Chloe was standing by the counter, bathed in a sliver of morning sun, wearing one of Alara's old t-shirts and a pair of sleep shorts. Her hair was a messy, glorious tangle, and she was concentrating fiercely on pouring steamed milk into 2 mugs. Alara came up behind her, wrapping her arms around Chloe's waist and resting her chin on her shoulder. "Morning," she murmured into the soft cotton of the t-shirt. Chloe leaned back into the embrace, her body relaxing into Alara's. "Morning, sleepyhead." "I was trying to be quiet." "You failed," Alara said, pressing a soft kiss to the side of her neck. "I was woken up by the overwhelming sense of contentment in the apartment. It's very loud." Chloe laughed, a real, unrestrained peal of sound. It was the same sound that had once been a blade in Alara's heart, but now it was just music. The most beautiful music in the world. She turned in Alara's arms, her hands coming up to cup Alara's face. "Is that a complaint?" she asked, her brown eyes sparkling with amusement and a deep, abiding affection that still, after all this time, took Alara's breath away. "Never," Alara whispered, leaning in to capture her lips in a soft, coffee-scented kiss. It was a gentle, familiar kiss, as easy and natural as breathing. The kind of kiss that didn't need to change the world, because it was already part of their world. They stood there for a long moment, lost in their own quiet bubble, the coffee momentarily forgotten. Chloe pulled back just enough to look at her, her expression turning serious. "Do you ever think about how close we came to not having this?" she asked, her voice soft. "If I hadn't broken up with Mark that night? If you hadn't lied about Sarah from the bookstore?" Alara smiled. "I think we would have found our way here eventually. It just might have taken a little longer. I think we were inevitable." "Inevitable," Chloe repeated, testing the word. "I like that." She paused, her thumb stroking Alara's cheek. "I'm glad it didn't take any longer, though. I feel like I wasted so much time." "It wasn't a waste," Alara said, her voice firm and sure. "It was the path that led us here. We both had to figure out who we were before we could be who we are together." Chloe's eyes softened, and she leaned in, resting her forehead against Alara's. "You're always so wise." "Only with you," Alara admitted. "You make me make sense." They fell into a comfortable silence, simply being. The city hummed to life outside their window, but in their small kitchen, time seemed to stand still. It was in these quiet, domestic moments that the reality of their love felt most profound. It wasn't just in the grand confessions or the life-altering kisses. It was in the shared mugs of coffee, the tangled sheets, the easy rhythm of their bodies moving around each other in a space that was home to them both. Chloe finally pulled away, a playful smile on her face. "Our lattes are getting cold." She handed Alara a mug, their fingers brushing. The touch still sent a tiny, pleasant spark through her, a gentle echo of the lightning bolt it had once been. They took their coffee to the window, looking out at the waking city below. Chloe leaned her head on Alara's shoulder, and Alara's arm wrapped instinctively around her. It felt right. It felt permanent. "You know," Chloe said thoughtfully, "for years I thought love was supposed to be this dramatic, earth-shattering dare. A leap of faith into the unknown with a relative stranger." She took a sip of her coffee. "But it turns out the biggest, most beautiful dare was just being honest with my best friend." Alara looked down at the top of Chloe's head, at the copper strands catching the morning light, and her heart felt so full it might just burst. She had spent years living in the quiet, aching space of a love she thought was impossible. She had learned its contours, its weight, its sorrow. And now she was learning its joy, its peace, its breathtaking simplicity. She understood that sometimes the most frightening dares led to the most beautiful discoveries. And sometimes, the place you had been searching for all along was the one that had been waiting for you, right there, the whole time. "Then we're both exactly where we need to be," Alara whispered, and she tightened her embrace, holding on to her home.